Okay, I have a 2007 GMC Acadia here. We're going to be replacing this engine. This one here actually seized up. It was just low oil pressure, and all of a sudden everything just locked up. It's got about 182,000 miles on this particular engine. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. Okay, I've got a 7/8 here. This works the best. I'm just going to go ahead and break the lugs loose before we start lifting it up or anything. Okay, now we're just going to go ahead and lift the vehicle and get it supported with jack stands. We've already got the tires chopped. Okay, I just got to hold the frame right here, and I've got a jack stand up under here. Okay, here's where we got both jack stands positioned for now. And I'm going to probably get some blocks back there as well. Okay, one of the first things I want to do is get on this transmission here. We've got an 11 millimeter. We're going to drain out all the fluid that we can out of this transmission. So you get you a pan handy and just start draining this out. And so this is not usually too messy, and I can get that out later, but usually I like to try to catch that. But usually you'll drain out about 4 quarts. Okay, after draining it out, I actually got 6 quarts out of here, so we'll definitely want to try to get at least that much. Of course, you never tell if somebody didn't have it overfilled before, but at least we know about what we need to get back in there. So we'll fill it and check it when we get it back together, but we got 6 quarts drained out. Okay, we've got it supported. We're going to go ahead and just finish removing all of our lugs here now. Alright, we're going to go ahead and get this wheel off. Okay, the next thing I'm going to get on is this axle nut. I've got a 33. If you're not using this impact, you'll want to lower the weight back down onto the wheel, and you'll have to punch out this little center hub on the wheel. Okay, here's your little center hub. You just give that a push. Comes right out of there, no problem. And instead, put the wheel back on. Put you a few lugs, lower the weight back down, and then you can break it loose. Okay, my impact actually wasn't budging this thing. This is my first attempt with my 1/2-inch adapter. I actually got a 3/4 breaker bar, but it snapped this piece, which that's the first time that's ever happened. So somebody got this really tight. Okay, we got it loose here. What I did is got a 3/4 drive. This is actually 1 5/16 inches, which fits just as good. Couldn't find a deep 33 handy, but the important thing is to have the 6-sided. So we've got it loose. We're going to go ahead and just take that off of there. So there we go, we got that off there. That's actually the second 1/2-inch breaker I've snapped off on these axle nuts. I think I'm going to start sticking to the 3/4 only. Okay, we're going to get on this top caliper. This is a 21. Okay, and now for the lower. There's those 2 bolts. Okay, we just got it wired up there. Okay, we got a little T27 here. You may need a little impact to get this off, depending on how tight it is. Okay, we'll go ahead and take this rotor off. Okay, you want to make sure that this is actually moving. It may try to seize up, so you want to spray lubricant, let it soak, and hit it here with a punch. Just don't damage your threads and be hitting on the threads there. Okay, now we're going to focus on these nuts here. These are 24 millimeters. I'm going to take it loose from the nut side here, and we may need to hold the other side. Okay, the bolt side is a 21. I'm going to hold it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take it loose here. Now we'll just get on the lower. Okay, we got our ABS here, 10 millimeter. Kind of twist it, it should come out. Okay, and these are splined, so we're going to hit it on this bevel. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of work this out of here while I'm pushing that. Okay, we're fixing to pop this CV axle out. I just got a crowbar. You could use a pry bar. These are not too difficult to get loose. Okay, we need to go a little bit more. It's still a little stuck. Okay, so I was just a little bit hung there. There we go. Okay, we're going to move over to the passenger side. Everything's pretty much the same except for the CV axle removal itself. So we'll just pick up there. Okay, so we're over here on this passenger side, and all we're going to do is come up here with this end of a small crowbar. Just kind of get in there and kind of rock on that until we can get that to come loose. So there we go. And this wasn't too bad. You can see that stub joint shaft there. Main thing is to grease them good when you put them back. Okay, here's a view at this end. Okay, the next thing we're going to be working on is removing these Phillips screws and the snaps that are left in here anyway. And this will have to be popped out as well. So this, and we're just going to be taking these inner panels off here next. Okay, the flap is out of there. We got, let's see, we got 1, 2, 3 of these 7 millimeters on each side. Go ahead and unclip your fog light. We're going to take these loose on each side first. Okay, that can actually stay there because it just kind of clips into that. So you don't have to remove that piece right there, just disregard that. Okay, so this one here is the only one you take out and you're able to pop it out. I just loosened these up to make it a little bit easier. Okay, we've got a couple of these Phillips up here on the top. Go ahead and take those 2 out. Okay, then we got these 10 millimeters. Got 2 more right here. Okay, with those loose, we should be able to go ahead and lift this off. Just remember your connectors for your fog lights. Should be able to start working this down off of here. Okay, there's another bolt down here I can't get this way. We're going to finish taking this. Got a couple of little snaps. We're just going to take that part, and this will actually have to stay on for a second. Okay, so now with those out, it'll go ahead and remove. You can see it's not that difficult. This piece is cracked here, but you can see how it connects down here. So we're going to go ahead and remove that. I've got two more of these 10 millimeters right down here. Okay, there's also a connector right here. That piece is actually designed for these to come off first here, but since it was broken, it come out there no problem. Okay, we're just removing the headlights. Got some 10 millimeters. And got one down here, and there's one under here. Okay, there's your connector for the headlight. Just squeeze down that one connector. Okay, we're going to work on removing this piece. We've got a couple bolts up here. We've got some bolts down here, and we may have some hidden bolts here, it looks like, going into this. This is kind of mashed up here, so we're going to be working on removing these so we can get this whole unit off here. Now we're going to have some things attached that we need to disconnect, like the hood pop. We've got some wires and stuff, etc. So we'll be disconnecting this. We're going to disconnect the radiator brace here. Now the radiator is going to be setting on the subframe, so it's not a problem. So we'll probably go ahead and get these off of here, and we're going to work on removing some of these bolts so we can get this unit here out of the way. And said we'll probably, once we get this piece out, we'll start draining the radiator down. Just remove these three 10 millimeter nuts right here. You can see they're on these little studded bolts. Okay, and get your connector right here for this latch, and we're just gonna disconnect this right here. Just peel that over and pop this wire out. Okay, we just push that over and pop that out. You push on these tabs, and this cable will just push right out of here. So just push in on those tabs right there, and take these two 13 millimeters out. We're just popping these loose off of this panel. It kind of runs along under here to the other side to other things, and it connects down here. I'm just going to label these. It hooks over here into a ground. I'm going to take it loose there and label that. We're just going to kind of put it back over here and work it across and just getting it loose. Okay, come in here behind the passenger seat here. Make sure you got your battery disconnected before you start disconnecting wires or anything. Said there's a panel that has a screw. This one was missing, but this panel here, you'll just look for this. There's like a screw that goes in there. I believe it's a torque screw. And you take that loose and just pop this other panel up. It just kind of clips down in there. Okay, we got the computer box, a couple 10 millimeters. We've got this AC line, got our overflow tank connected here, a couple 10 millers. Go ahead and take those out. Okay, I'm just removing this piece. Got 4 of these 15s and a 10. And the same thing over here. Now this side's bent a little bit, but I'm getting ready just to take this piece right here off. Okay, so there's that. Now we're going to go ahead, get these two up here. It's 13s, we got 10 at the bottom on each side. And we're going to long as we got everything loose, we're going to go ahead and lift this up. Okay, this is loose. What we're going to do is go ahead and drain the radiator down, and we're going to go ahead and try to remove the radiator and fan. We're just going to be leaving the condenser, and then we're going to go ahead and pop this piece off. Okay, all I did was pop this lower hose off over on this side, and I'm just letting it drain. Now we also got a couple of transmission cooler lines. Got one here, and we've got another one right down there, and there's a little spring clip. Got to get your little pick tool on there and pop that off, just try not to lose it, and then you'll just pop it back on after you get this hose out. And these are kind of difficult, you have to wiggle them out, but we're fixing to get on that after we let this drain. Now this condenser, I've already got it loose. There's a little clip here I just popped off. This little flap holds it to the radiator right here, so you have to pop that. Now these just have little squeeze-in tabs, and this pops out, and this condenser, as you see, will just lift up. So that's loose. So we've got the top hose off, we've got this hose off. So the only thing we got left is our transmission cooler. We'll just mark those, get those loose. We'll get our wire connector here, just squeeze down and work that out of there. Here's what that clip looks like. That's the one that I removed from the top. I could get to this one, but I cannot get to that bottom one, so we're going to have to remove it from the transmission by removing that 13 there. Okay, we got that line back over here. It comes off there very easily, and we're going to go ahead and start lifting this whole unit out of here. Okay, with the radiator out of the way, we're going to go ahead and lift this piece out of the way, and we'll probably going to put cardboard on this as well, so we're not damaging it in the process. Okay, here's this piece. There's a couple more connectors. You just pull back on that, push down on the yellow part with a pick tool, and they're back up under here. Removing this piece, it's just got a couple of 13 millimeters holding it. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start working on getting this air box here out of the way. Got a band right here. We got the shroud. We just popped that thing off. Okay, here's that whole unit out. There is a cable that runs right under the bottom. It's for this hood latch that's connected to the bottom. Other than that, there's just a 10 millimeter over here, and it just pops up and out of there. Okay, I'm going to get on this transmission shifter cable here next. Just pop that off there. Come over here, we got a clip. Just pull that up, and then you'll have to push in on each one of these sides. Just almost got it there. Now we got that loose. Just make sure to keep up with this. Okay, we got our fuel and our fuel return here. It's got this safety clip on here. Just need to pop that down and get you a fuel or gas remover clip. The plastic ones work too. This up here, you just squeeze down and you should be able to get it loose. Get yourself some disconnects. Put a rag on it in case it's got pressure. Now you're probably going to leak a little bit out. Okay, now we got these quick disconnects here for the heater hoses, or you could disconnect this part here. Looks like they've got this crimp, but you just squeeze these in and they should pull themselves right off. I'm going to go ahead and take this box loose. There's some 10 millimeters, supposed to be one here. And up here we're going to take those loose so we can kind of pick this up and move it out of the way a little bit so I can gain some access over here. Okay, you see these connectors on the bottom that connect to this fuse block here. We're going to take this out, and that'll release those. There's also a connector back here we're going to disconnect. Okay, when you get that screw loose, it'll come off there like that. Okay, we got that fuse block out of the way. There was a ground up here. As you can see, all of this is loose, and we could just stick this back on the engine or disconnect it or whatever would be easier at this point. Yeah, it runs over here. We'll have to disconnect it over here as well. But we're getting everything loose from the body. I think the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get underneath and get on this exhaust and start taking the exhaust loose. Okay, I'm starting up here removing the bolts, or the nuts rather, on this. Now if this happens to you, you can knock this out with a hammer. It does take a little doing, but you can knock that out and just put you a regular bolt back in there. But I'm going to start here, and we're going to go back there. Get those, whatever size they are, they all seem to be different, like they've been replaced. And we're going to get back on that section back there, and looks like we've got some kind of a bolt holding it here as well, so we need to get that loose. So we're going to get all these loose, and then after that we'll probably take this little brace here, and I'm going to just drop this whole exhaust piece here out of the way. Now there is one more hanger, rubber hanger back there. You have to slip it out of that. Usually a little bit of spray lubricant helps. That's what I'm working on. We're just taking out this piece here now. We got our bolts on our exhaust loose. We got to take these O2 sensors loose. This one here is easy enough to get to. I got to get the one in the back there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take this brace. We got these 15s. I'll take it out of the way so this exhaust will come out a little easier here. Okay, now originally I was thinking of just bringing it up through the front here. The reason I took the front off, but because of the way that these AC lines are routed, I'm not going to be able to do that without disturbing my AC, so we're going to have to go through the bottom. So I'm going to be dropping the subframe down to show you we've got the exhaust just laid back here out of the way, and this is with the exhaust out of the way. So I'm going to work on getting the AC compressor loose next. We got one of these little bars that are flat for removing this belt. You slip it into that 1/2 inch slot, and I've just got a regular 3/8 down here for slipping it in there. So there's all that is. You can just slip that 3/8, and it also has another bar. But on a lot of these vehicles with these the limited space, you need that little flat bar to be able to get in there. Okay, to make it easier to get to the AC, I'm going to go ahead and remove this alternator. We got some 15s, and it looks like this little idler has a bolt going through there as well. Really not sure. Okay, so we got the 13 off the wire, little connector, the two 15s, and then this idler bolt that's going through it here is the final bolt holding it on. Okay, alternator's out. We've got a couple of connectors here and here, and we've got a couple of bolts, 13s, nut, bolt, and 2 on the top, so 4 all together, and then we'll get that loose from the engine here. Okay, so the compressor is off. Would have been easier with the mount out of the way there, but I don't want to remove that just yet. Okay, because we had to have a change of plans dropping the subframe, I've had to relocate my jack stands. Basically, I just put some blocks back here. Got a jack stand behind it on each side. So we're on the body of the vehicle now and not on the subframe, as you can see. Now I went ahead and I took out the 2 15s right there on each side. Still got the big massive bolt. And we went ahead, we got a 18 millimeter on this stabilizer link. We took it loose right here because it's easier to get to. So the everything is loose on the subframe here, so we can drop it down. Now all of the mounts are going to be on the subframe, except for this one here. We're just going to take this torsion mount, basically loose torque mount, and remove it. You can see how you got your mount here, you've got your mount over here. You also got one in the back, if I could show you, right here. So this engine is setting on the subframe. It's not going anywhere, so we're going to remove that. Then we've got over here steering column. We're going to get that bolt right there. I don't know what size that is yet. We're going to take that out. So that's, the rack is loose from the steering column. Okay, so we got the torque mount out of the way. This bracket right here is going to hit as it comes down, so this has to be removed as well. So we've got these 2 long 18 millimeter bolts. And we'll just take that completely out of the way. So now we got that mount cleared up. Okay, we got that 11 millimeter out of there. Also put a paint mark on both those, so just in case it does get moved. And that will actually push up and off there, but we'll push it up as we're lowering it. Okay, the next thing I'm going to get on is this, removing this, because it's going to be easier just to remove it while I've got it out up here, because it's going to be transferred over. And then after we get that, we're going to move on. We've got these 3 bolts on this part of the subframe on each side that we're going to need to get out. Those are 15 millimeters. So we're going to get this here off, disconnect here. These you just pull out and then you lift up on that part, and then that will pop off there, or it should. Just like that. Okay, with the heat shield out of the way, 3 10 millimeters, get on these 3 15s and we'll disconnect the catalyst. Okay, on top of these 3, down here on the bottom, you can see that bracket right there. There's a 15 bolt coming into that, so you have to remove that as well. Okay, the dipstick has a 10 millimeter. You have to take that loose to be able to get to the 113 on the bottom. So it's got one left. It's going to come off here. We're going to go ahead and get the starter out of the way. Got an 8 millimeter screw for this shroud. Now we'll go ahead and get to our plug-in wire, and we'll get this here loose. Okay, so we got the 15 millimeters out of the starter and got it off. Now this was I had to remove it to get this loose. You actually push down on this part with a pick tool. I just couldn't see it from the front here. And also disconnected this knock sensor. Okay, now I'm getting the bolts out of the front of the subframe here, these 3 15s on each side. Okay, I want to show you the bolts we got coming through here. We've got 21mm body mount bolt, got one there, the ones in the back are already out, the smaller ones. So we've got this one front and back, and we got on the other side the same thing. Those are the ones that we have to take out. Now we're going to go ahead and get rigged up with the lift before we start lowering it, and we'll be careful as to, because in the back part of the engine it's hard to tell if there may be a wire or a line or something still attached, because it's really hard to see back there. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to lower it really slowly, and we'll just kind of keep an eye on things. But for the most part, I've got everything disconnected that I can possibly think of. So we're going to work on taking those 4 bolts. We're going to get the lift over here, and I'm going to go ahead and get some straps and stuff on it and get some tension on it before we start lowering the subframe here. Okay, we got it set up, and I got some tension on it here. I just went ahead and kind of done a test run. I can lift the vehicle up, so I know I've got a good secure strap. And all I did was run some bolts through here where the bolts were going through originally, and over here, as far as this goes, we just got around this bracket right here, and I've got like 3 straps on each side. Just kind of doubled them up, tied everything together, and we're just gonna start taking the bolts out. And as we do, we'll just start slowly lowering everything, and we'll keep a close eye on everything back here, because like I said, it could be a hidden wire or something. We don't want to break anything. Oh, I wanted to point something else out. When running the strap, I actually took this bracket for this power steering loose, and I took these connectors loose here and actually went underneath where this wire is, because anything that gets a lot of tension like this, you start breaking the connectors and you can damage stuff. So you got to be careful the way that you run your straps. Okay, we got our little dolly in place here, and we've got some 2x4s on there just to kind of get it up where it's not going to be sitting on my lift. And we've got the rear bolts out. See the one over there sitting there? So we've got those out, and now we're just getting ready to go ahead and get these front 2, and we'll be able to get it on down. So basically the lift's going to be the only thing holding it. Okay, the power steering here is wrapped around my AC line, so I had to take it loose down here at this cooler, and I'm just draining out what I can here. Okay, so we're removing this front one. We're going to get on that other side and get the other one. That very front piece actually separates as well, so everything is loose now. We're going to slowly start lowering this down here and checking that back, make sure we hadn't missed anything. Okay, so I started to lower it. I just realized that my strap is right over the top of my Freon line that I was trying to avoid. So what I'm going to have to do basically is either lower the vehicle, or I'm going to have to build up some more blocks onto my dolly down here, because I'm going to have to actually get it set down and get this loose from here before I can work this here out. So I'm going to have to do some reorienting here. But what I should have done was come underneath this Freon line. Okay, this would have went smoothly if I had not had this over the top of my Freon line, but I'm just having to deal with it. You can see it's all completely loose, and the back is clear. I don't see anything connected. that I have seen, and it's quite a bit lower back here. It's wanting to kind of all the weight go to the back, but I'm like slowly taking the blocks out on each side and just lowering it down until I can get it sitting down here. You see I've got about 4 inches or so to go here. Okay, I actually got it setting on here for the most part. I've got a 4x4 right here. I'm trying to keep it where it's not hanging up on my lift. And said now I've got the tension off, I'm going to go ahead and take this strap and get it loose. That way this is going to kind of go over the top of the engine. And we're just going to be rolling it right out the front. But just got to get that strap loose because it's over the top of that Freon line. But you see, got it setting on there. Seems the whole subframe is just setting on the dolly. And I just lowered it down the vehicle a little bit more. Okay, as you can see, it's kind of a pain. I'm having to work this up and over. I could lift the vehicle some more, but I'm just pulling it out and kind of lifting this up and over. I kind of got it supported a little bit with a bungee strap, but I'm just pulling it out. It's kind of setting on my lift a little bit, so I'm just pulling the whole thing out here. And here's a view at the back. And surprisingly, we didn't miss anything. Okay, here it is all out on the dolly here. I've got the lift out of the way. We're just going to roll it on out. Okay, we should be able to continue rolling it. It's not in a bind here. I mean, it's a little bit front heavy here, so my dolly's wanting to kind of tip forward. I got to tell you, I've been quite amazed with this little cheap $15 Harbor Freight mover's dolly. Other than just putting a couple 2x4s to brace it, I really haven't done anything to it, and it's, I don't know, I think it's probably far exceeded its weight. I don't know what all this weighs with the subframe, but I'm assuming it's quite a bit. I mean, you can see what a monster this is. But surprisingly, it's pretty easy to drop down if you don't have your Freon lines to contend with like I did. If I'd had my strap in the right location, you can see what. So this will work out really well. See, I'm waiting on the engine. We'll get the engine in place on here, set up the mounts, roll it back under, and now that I know a little bit what to expect, I think it'll go a little smoother going back in. So just to give you a view of it, it's just quite enormous when you got it out here like this. I mean, it's the whole front of the vehicle just about. And this engine is really tall. I mean, with it out here like this, looking at it, I can tell what a tall engine that is, with it being a V6. So here is the vehicle, nothing here, the front and everything gone, which is, you know, unless you've got a 4-post lift, you're going to want to take that front off, or you're going to have to raise it up really high, and it's going to be more trouble working around that bumper and everything. I'll just take it off. Not worth keeping it on. But got my Freon still there, intact, and we're going to go ahead and so next thing we'll just start separating this engine off and just working on that, get this rear exhaust and everything, and whatever I need to get this engine, I'll get my lift back on here and get this engine out of the way. It'll be easy to deal with. I would not want to do a timing job on one of these with it in the vehicle. So okay, so we're going to start working on getting the bolts out of this transmission. Now keep in mind we're still locked down to our mounts, but we're going to start getting all the bolts out we can, and then I'm probably going to use maybe this mount as a lift point so I can lift it up and off here. It is locked up, so we're going to have to try to work it out. We'll have to pry it out of the transmission. We're just going to leave that on its mount over here and probably support it a little bit. And we've got some stuff to remove over here. I really don't want to remove the rack if I don't have to. It's just going to make the alignment problems worse, so I'm just going to leave it if I can. If I can work around it, I'm going to try to leave it. If not, I'll take it off there. It's not a big deal, but I'm just going to try to leave that on. And I said I'm going to try to hook to this, try to lift it, and start getting like this other part of the CV axle out and this brace, and getting all of the bolts out of the transmission at this point. Okay, the first thing, we got the pump, power steering pump removed. It just has 2 bolts, one there and one here holding it, and then there's one clamp, has a 10mm, so I've just kind of got that set now out of the way. Okay, I've just been getting all of these transmission bolts out and labeling them where they go, just numbering those. The next thing I'm going to do, there's some bolts or nuts here for the CV axle. We're going to take those out right there, and those are 15s, I believe, but we're going to take these out and we're going to go ahead and see if we can't slide that stub shaft out of there. Once we get that, we're going to go ahead and hook up to it with the straps and get some tension on it with the lift, and then we'll work on taking these mounts on both sides and wiggling it off of here. Now the problem with this is with the engine locked up, the torque converter is going to have to be pulled out of the seal, so we have to get a pan and get it ready, and be careful that we don't make a big mess. And there's really not any way to avoid it because I don't have any way of rotating it. So we'll get a pan, we'll catch the fluid, and we'll just pour it up and try to remember how much we lost here. Okay, so we got it rigged up here. You want to be careful with your straps, you're not breaking anything, and just got it running around the exhaust. Took these top nuts off, and I'm just going to lift it up a little bit, and I'm going to attempt to take the bolt off the bottom of that since I've got it supported here, and carefully try to work this out here, work that mount out of there so I can have some wiggle room. You can see got a little bit of a gap here now because I lifted on it, so it is loose, and I just have to continue to once I get these loose I can wiggle it on off of there. So that's all we're doing. Okay, so I wound up just taking this mount out, and then I worked the one out on that side, so the mounts are out of there, and I've already got it kind of separated here, and I'm fixing to start working it apart, and I've got it on the lift. I'm going to get it set on the floor over here. So I just like to kind of use a putty knife and a screwdriver, and I'm just kind of protecting the transmission side. I'm just prying the engine away just carefully. And like I said, I'm going to get, as I'm pulling this out, I'm going to get a pan down here because more than likely we're going to get a lot of transmission fluid coming out here when this kind of comes loose. Now the transmission is going to stay put. It's sitting on a board, and it's got the mount. So this is just going to swing loose on my lift here as I'm kind of prying it apart. You notice I kind of lowered it back down to take a little bit of the stress off of where it's more even. Okay, one thing I didn't anticipate is that I wouldn't have room to slide this out of the subframe with it being locked up and then, you know, in the torque converter in there. So Had to wind up taking the transmission completely loose, twisting it around over here to get it out of the way. So now I can actually lift this up. Had to get some floor dry and clean it up. Usually I can get the pan under there in time, but with it being stuck in there, I couldn't do nothing about it. Okay, so there's a transmission. Looks like somebody had worked on this, actually replaced this seal. I can see how it's got a little bit of damage there. Probably will have to replace that again though. Here's the engine sitting out here. We just got to get everything swapped over pretty much to the other, all the wire harnesses on here. And now I've got to try to determine, now it could be that I have to break this engine down a lot more to get to these bolts in here. A lot of times that's the case, but so we're gonna probably wait until we get some more things off of it though, and get some things swapped over, and then I can just kind of tear it down as I need be. I can take whatever I need off of it, but I think I'm just gonna wait on that because I don't even have the other engine just yet. Okay, here's the replacement engine. Got it in here, and I took the time to clean up this subframe a little bit here while I was at it, and got the transmission sitting over here. Now I did go ahead and put another torque converter seal in there before I put that torque converter back in there. Now I'll show you in the daylight what I did. I did pretty much take this old engine completely apart, just piece by piece. You can just pick everything up by hand now, because I had to totally disassemble it to get my torque converter, and it was seized up pretty bad. So I think what we're going to do a little bit different than the way I was taking it out. I'm going to go ahead and just mate the transmission up to it here, and we're going to get it bolted up. I did have to use the old flex plate, torque these down to 60 foot-pounds, and you notice I've got in this little window for the starter, I've got the hole there, and I'll make sure that one over there is lining up as well with that starter hole so we can get our bolts in there. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and work this into place. You'll want to clean your surface, make sure that everything's nice and burr free. Put your little grease on these where these dowels are, and a little grease around this nub as well where we slide that into place. So I'm just getting ready to slide these together, and I think we'll go ahead and get this bolted up. And what I'm going to do is actually mount it up here before I go about hooking my wire harness up. At least that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to get it on the mounts. I'm just going to set the engine and transmission over here together onto the subframe, and then we'll work on getting the wire and stuff hooked up. But right now I've got to get the transmission slid over here into place, get it bolted up, and then we can get it set on the subframe and see about getting something done. Okay, I've got the mounts secured onto the subframe, and I've got the transmission hooked up. I was just getting ready to get my bolts and the flex plate here coming through the starter here. I've got everything mostly lined up, so I'm going to turn that flex plate a little bit, but I've got my 18s here. We're going to be putting some medium Loctite. Of course, I'm Loctiting everything, every bolt that's going on here. Motor mounts everywhere. Everything's getting Loctite, medium Loctite on the transmission and everything. So I'm just going to get the bolts in the flex plate here. We're going to go ahead, and we've got this on for the mount. We're going to get the starter in, and I think we've got everything else. I believe I've got I've got a bracket I've got to put on over here, and I'm going to try to get the wires and everything on after I get it mounted up here onto the subframe. So that's all I'm doing, and then we're just going to get a hold of it, strap it up, move it over here, and the plan is we're just going to roll it under the vehicle. You see about how far up I've got it here. The plan is we're going to roll it under the vehicle. I think I'm just going to lower the vehicle down onto the subframe. Really no need in getting the lift on it and doing all that extra work. I can just lower the vehicle. Ideally, if you've got two big jacks, it'd be better. Lower both sides kind of at the same time. But I'm just going to kind of be taking blocks out, doing it one at a time. But anyways, we're going to continue on here. Okay, so I got my straps kind of run to the transmission and then around this mount and around this up here, kind of on 3 points, and then under this part. We're just getting ready to set it onto the subframe here. I'm just going to go ahead and get rigged up. Okay, so here we are getting ready to set it down onto the mounts, just lining it up. Pretty easy out here. So we just got to get these three. We're just kind of watching, making sure nothing's going to be in the way here as I'm setting it down. Okay, we got it setting down here. Now we just got to get our nuts onto the studs here, the 3 studs, and we'll go ahead and start hooking some other things up and getting our wire harness. The thing you have to be careful about when moving these engines around is that you're not getting your straps hung on stuff. I don't know how many times I've broken a connector or something just being careless and not watching, so you have to really be careful about that. Okay, so now we got the fun job of getting all the harness back where it goes, and it's pretty, once you get one spot figured out, it's pretty easy. Everything just kind of clips back. You got this place here that runs down in front of the engine that bolts in. This clips on the front here, so we just kind of got to get everything started back over here, and then we'll work our way around to the other side. Once you kind of get a starting point, it's pretty simple. And of course, I numbered everything just to make sure there's no confusion. I can look at the other engine for reference. Okay, I went ahead and slid the little stub shaft back in. We got this reconnected, this wires, and this little shroud in the bracket set, and we just line that back up in there like that. I'm going to go ahead and get these bolts, these 3 bolts back in. Okay, now I'm just getting this 18 back in this bracket, 15. Okay, we pretty much got everything reconnected back here, even up on the throttle housing, coil packs, all the braces. We got the power steering pump and the clamps and everything reconnected here. So this is all pretty much ready to go back here. We're going to go ahead and just focus on the front, and it's pretty much the same thing. It's got a few connections here, and I still have yet to get that starter in there. I need to get that in there so I can get everything hooked up here. But so it's pretty easy. Everything just kind of goes into place once you kind of get started on it. Okay, so we're just getting ready to roll this back under the vehicle. I just wanted to give you another view of this. And it really looks huge when it's out here like this. It's just really a really tall engine, but surprisingly it works pretty good rolling it on this mover's dial. And you see how I've got it lifted up where I can get my lift to slide underneath this if I needed it. And of course when I was putting it on there. So and it'll be up a little bit higher, so when I lower this down, it'll go on nice and smooth. But keep in mind, we only have the 4 big bolts that go through, and then we've got the front piece. While I'm thinking about it, I wanted to show you forgot to show you this engine. I took this apart piece by piece, and this is what's left of it. Of course, I've used anything I needed. There's the crank, but I had to pretty much disassemble it, and this is all that gunk I was showing you, like really bad. Even the oil pan itself was gunked up. Just really something terrible. And like I said, I mean, oil changes are a must, I'm sure. Now this was not frothy like this, is just because it's sitting out in the moisture. There actually wasn't any coolant or anything in the oil. It was just sludged up, and it was right about in the middle of the crank here, where it really seized up. You can see it right there, and you can just tell it was getting no oil whatsoever to those rod bearings there. Like from all this sludge and everything, it was just not getting any oil through there. So definitely, if you can, run some cleaner through yours. You think that it might be getting sludged, because if not, you're going to be replacing the engine. Pretty much got nothing to lose. But you know, short of rebuilding the engine, I don't know how you would go in and clean all this out. Now I suppose you could take your valve covers and your oil pan and take a lot of stuff off and clean it, but then you'd have to reassemble it. Would not be fun. But anyways, that's what I did. Took everything apart to get the torque converter out of there, and I was able to determine exactly where the failure had took place, which, I mean, it's really bad. It's one of the worst ones I've seen. I mean, it really just seized and melted that rod bearing there. I mean, it just welded it on there pretty much. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and start just scooting this, rolling this under here, and we'll get everything. I would have liked to had this heat shroud here, but we don't got that. It was missing. So I'm probably not going to go back in after the fact and try to put that in. Don't even know how you would do it. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and just start rolling it over here and get our 4 bolts in. And like I said, there's another piece here that bolts on the front. You see this piece right here is going to bolt on to the front as well. There are 3 bolts right here on each side, and that's going to bolt on along with that those 4 big subframe bolts, and there are some big bolts. And I'll be using some Loctite, and I'm just going to use the impact and just tighten them down really good and tight. You'll notice that we did get some new bushings on here. Those were shot. I really want to see what the vehicle's going to do before I really put some money into it. We don't even know what it's going to do yet. I want to make sure that it's going to be a good running vehicle, and we can always come back and we can deal with some of this other stuff that needs to be dealt with, because I can tell the tie rods and control arms look like they're shot as well, the ball joints. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and get it under here. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how hard this is going to be to scoot. And I know where I've got a crack up here in my concrete, it's going to give me some difficulty. So I may have to work with it here. This is a lot of weight. I'm going to have to do something because it is definitely catching in that crack up there. Okay, so I was able to get it by actually pulling on the front there. Now let's see if I can get the back half across real quick. And surprisingly, this moves pretty easy. And I'm just amazed that he said this little, I'm sure if you had a more heavy duty set of wheels on there, it'd work a little better. Okay, so we're working it in here. Now we just have the tedious job of fitting it in between the frame here, and I got to get the AC compressor and line up over the top of the engine. And if we can do this without breaking any little silly connectors, that'll be great. Okay, as you can see, we're pretty much into place. I only have to lower this thing. It looks like about 7 or 8 inches, which is no problem. I think we're going to get the AC compressor, kind of let it hang down there. We're gonna check and make sure nothing's in the way. And I could either do it. I could either lower the vehicle, or I could simply get a hold of the subframe and lift it up. Either way would work. So we'll just see which one looks like it's going to be the easiest. It may be easier just to get my jack onto the subframe and just go to raising it up. It's not going to hit anything, and then go to the back and lift the back. So I don't know. We'll see whatever's going to be easiest. If I had 2 jacks, it'd be just as easier just to lower the vehicle at the same time, but I'm just utilizing one big jack. So I got my jack in the center of the subframe. My plan is I'm going to lift it up and go to the back and lift it up, and then see about getting some bolts started. I've got some jack stands I can use to support it, and I think I'm just going to lift using my jack. I'm just going to lift it up that way and get these long bolts started. Okay, what I actually wound up doing is just putting some more blocks under my dolly here, because it's slightly out of adjustment and I wouldn't be able to roll it if I put it on jack stand, so that was kind of a bad idea. But anyways, I'm going to start with this rear one here, and of course we're going to get a little bit of Loctite on there, and this bracket goes up and then the 2 bolts go on the back of it. We're going to start with this one and get it under this back corner here, and I'm just going to work on the ones. The back's a little bit closer. I'm going to get these 2, and then I'm going to lift the front and get the front one started. Okay, I got the back passenger corner over there, and I'm just using a little jack and my other jack over there, and I've got some more blocks under this. You can see we're a little bit off here, and I'm just kind of doing the diagonal corners first, and the other ones should line up. So I'm just having to kind of push this here around a little bit, and surprisingly it's not real hard to move on here. And see, that right there is all I need. And now I'm just going to raise it up a little more here, get my jack under it, and we're just going to raise it on up a little more. And I need to get some Loctite on this, but I'm just going to kind of get it in place. And I am watching, because we don't want to run the risk of breaking something up there. Okay, there we got it lined up. I'm just going to put some of this high strength Loctite on here. I don't use this for a lot of things. Started here. Okay, now that I got this one and that back corner over there lined up, I'm going to go ahead and get the other two Loctited, because they should go in no problem. Okay, with everything aligned, I actually take these front bolts back out because this part goes on to this mount that you see right here. So I'm going to take those bolts back out and slip this up and on to its location. Okay, so we got it into place. You'll notice we're going to have to tighten it up to even get these up here to line up. So we're going to have to start tightening these bottom bolts here, so these 3 bolts up here on each side will line up properly. But we got it set on there, so we'll just start snugging them up. Okay, so we got the 4 main bolts on the subframe fastened down nice and tight. Got these 3 in the front on each side. I think we're going to go ahead at this point and start working on, we'll get the compressor, the alternator, a lot of this stuff up here back together, and start working on reconnecting all these wires that we can, and getting this front exhaust on. And once we get that done, we may focus on getting our CV axles, knuckles back together, and then get on the underneath, get the exhaust section back in. But we're going to go ahead and work on this wiring and stuff up here now. Okay, AC compressor is on, and those don't have to be real tight. I went like 25 foot-pounds on those. They're little bolts. We got it all connected up, and we're getting ready to slip our alternator back on. We'll get this wire that you see going from the starter reconnected, and we'll start working on some of this other stuff here. But it's starting to come along here. Actually, I'm trying to think of what order that I took this manifold off in. I may have to just loosely put the alternator on for a minute, because I want to make sure that I'm not going to have any issues with this exhaust manifold here. Okay, the alternator is not going to interfere with the manifold getting it on, so I went ahead and hooked it up. We're going to go ahead, get the wire over here, get it plugged in, and I'm going to go ahead and slip my serpentine belt on now, since we've got everything reattached here. Okay, so I just got the exhaust manifold on. I went 25 foot-pounds on those, and we got the belt back on. Don't forget about this idler here. It has to go back on here, and actually that needs to go on before you slip the alternator in, because there's not enough room. So I got the belt on, got it looped around there, all that's hooked up. I'm just getting ready to put the other pieces of catalyst on here, and we're going to get the heat shroud, and we're just going to continue on hooking some other electrical stuff up. Okay, we're getting ready to set the fuse box back in here. Went ahead and put this hose, you know, they got a mark on there, so I know which way it was going to orient here. So we're just getting ready to mount this back up here, and of course we got our power steering reservoir there. It's going to mount. We got this torsion mount in, and so we're just going to continue on. We've got these 2 big wires. I've got labeled number 10, one coming off of this starter, that are coming up here to connect on this junction right here. Okay, so now I'm just bolting these connectors to the bottom of the fuse block here, and then we're going to slip it back down on here. Okay, I got these 2. I'm going to reconnect this ground right up here with a 10mm. Okay, we just reconnected the 2 hot wires coming into here. Okay, so we just slipped this back in here, put that little safety clip, snapped it on here, and I've got the 2 heater hoses back in the position there. Okay, I finally got that bracket holds this back into place. It's should have done that first, but anyway, we got that back on there. Now, I think at this point I'm going to go ahead and go underneath and get my exhaust and stuff hooked up. So we're just going to go ahead and work on that. Okay, so we got our exhaust all hooked up under here, and we went ahead and got some anti-seize. And I think we're going to go ahead and get our CV axles and get our knuckles and stuff together. So when we get the rest of this up here, we'll be ready to get the front end on. Okay, we got the CV axles in. We got everything on except for our wheels over here and the little fender wheels. But right now I'm working some of this wiring back into place. See, I got the computer box here. This is wrapping back over in here. I made this connection. We got a connector that's going up there. So I got a ground here. We got everything labeled, even where they're snapping in place. These two connect right here. So there's not going to be any difficulty. We do have to get down here and reconnect that collar on to the steering here. And as you can see, we got a paint mark on it. So it's not getting out of alignment. So I'm going to line that paint mark back up the way that it was and slip that back on. Okay, so we got our steering column on. I used high strength Loctite on that bolt, and we've got everything hooked up over here. So we've got our fuel line, our vacuum lines, and everything, shifter cable. We've got most of this up here is just going to be going to the front bumper, to the radiator, the hood latch, the headlights, and all that. We just kind of got them set in here because we've got everything for the most part hooked up here. I think I'm going to work on getting some oil and getting the transmission fluid in, and then we'll continue on, see about getting our radiator set back into place. I think I'm going to try to get it running, get some coolant in it, and basically leave this front off till I can get it running and get everything kind of checked out here at the very least. Okay, there's a little connector down here on the rack that I about forgot, so make sure to push that back on there. It's got a little spring clip thing. Okay, I've just set it on here. I know I'm probably not going to get everything together today, but I want to try to get everything hooked up and get some coolant, get some oil and everything in there, and see if I can't get it fired up and see how it's running. So I've got the transmission lines reattached. Definitely disconnect those from these attachments. It's way easier than fooling with these over here. So okay, you see I've got most everything other than the lights and the horn. I've got everything hooked up. We've got all the grounds. We've got a couple of connectors and latches that go on up here. But we've got a radiator condenser snapped together. Got the power steering cooler up here, and I'm going to go ahead and start getting some transmission fluid in here slowly. I'm going to have to get at least about 6 quarts. So I got a couple jugs, and I'm going to go ahead and get some oil in after I get this transmission. I know I'm going to have to get at least about 6 quarts because I drained out at least that much, and I know I lost a little bit more than that with that torque converter. So go ahead and get this filled up. Okay, we got 6 quarts of transmission fluid, and we got a jug of 530 in here. Now I am going to have to get some power steering fluid back in because I had to take a hose loose, but I'm just got kind of everything set up here, and I'm going to be running some water through just till I make sure I don't have any leaks. So I'm going to go ahead and get some water in here, see how much it's going to hold, and everything goes well. I think we'll go ahead and slap that intake on, or the our air box and stuff, and see if we can't get this thing fired up here. Okay, so we got some water in it. I'm just kind of double checking everything. I've went ahead and I popped this fuse for the fuel over here, this one, and I've cranked it over just to circulate some oil through the engine, because I know the engine's been sitting around. So I'm going to try to fire it up. We've got all the fluids in it and everything connected, and we're going to see what it's going to do here. Alright, so we're about to fire it up here. I've just got the air box just kind of setting up here so I could connect stuff and tighten up the band. And we've got all our fluids filled up, so we're going to go ahead and crank it up. Okay, so I got it cranked up and running. I'm just going to kind of watch the gauges and everything here and just see how it's going to do when it starts idle and stuff. So far it's sounding alright. I hadn't seen any check engine lights or anything start flashing yet. It's starting to idle down, so I'm just going to kind of look for leaks and everything while I've got this front end off, and then we'll get back on this in the daylight and get the rest of it put together. So all we have to do is get the front and the brace and stuff, and it's really not that much left to do to it. I got everything just kind of sitting here. So the only connectors we ain't got is like for the lights and stuff and the horn. And we're going to keep putting some water in here, work the air out. Okay, everything's sounding good. I've been running it for about 15 minutes or so. But the only problem is the fans themselves ain't kicking on. And they weren't kicking on with the AC on either, so I'm going to have to figure out what's going on with them. I don't know if they were working before, but it is unusual for both of them to be out at the same time. One, yes, but both is uncommon, so I probably got another issue somewhere as to why, but I'll get back on that because everything else is sounding good, and I think in the daylight we can go ahead and start putting the rest of it together. Okay, so I'm just getting ready to start putting this front piece here on first, and we're going to start working a lot of the wires and clipping them back to this. Okay, because I had the radiator and stuff on here, I had a pretty good time getting that piece in, because really you should have slid that on before the radiator, but I wanted to get everything hooked up. But what I did was I took the condenser back off, hung it down, and was able to squeeze everything back in there kind of at an angle, but it wasn't easy. So now I'm going to get my top bolts that are up here on either side of the cab. I'm going to get those started just to hold it, and then as you can see, we've got to get this piece over here. This is that has to go on and bolt to this up here at the same time. Okay, so we're just working on tightening these two bolts up here on each side, and then we'll get on those others. Okay, so we're just kind of reattaching this cable back where it goes, and we've got these connectors right here. Slip them into place, put the little safety tab. Now, I'm not really too worried about making sure every little snap is back into place, because they really tend to go way overboard when it comes to putting these on, and it makes it really difficult for removal. But we're just going to connect these connectors and get these safety tabs back on here, and we'll just kind of clip the wire back in to where it goes, so it's just being held. But they really put so many little clips that it makes it's pretty time consuming when you're removing this harness for sure. Okay, so we're going to work on this bumper piece here. We got to get our big 15mm bolts back into place. Probably going to put some medium Loctite on these as well. Alright, so I'm just going to finish tightening these down real tight after I get both sides good and started. So we're making progress. We only have a few connections left, like I said, for like our horn and the headlights. Now, I do have that cable there for this hood latch. I'm going to have to route it back around where it needs to go. I'm going to go ahead and get these here tightened down. Okay, we have the front bumper attached. I'm going to go ahead and mount this computer box here. I think once we get this, we're gonna go ahead and get our hood latch bolted down. Okay, so I have this piece that I have to get these little studded ends back down there onto the frame, and we're gonna mount this back up here. Get our 2 bolts going into this. Okay, so here's our 2 studded bolts coming through, and we just got to tighten these up. We'll have to get that top fastened. We'll tighten them all at once. And you can see where the old bolts were fastened down. We'll kind of put it in that same area so everything latches down the same, hopefully. Okay, so now we're just going to snug these down here a little bit, and then we'll get on that lower. And I can tell that it's in pretty much the same spot, but you know, we'll see how everything matches up when we get it all get the hood latch on here. Okay, so we just got to feed this into here, and we'll get just hooks back around there, and you can just pull that and get that fastened in, and we'll go ahead and mount this up, and the little wire kind of runs around the back and reattaches that hood latch there. So we just got these 3 10mm, and we'll go ahead and snug this down. We'll kind of get it back to where it was, and hopefully it's going to fasten down the hood right. Okay, and this has adjustment, so if we need to, we'll just take these little 3 nuts loose and adjust it out. We got this to connect to this wire, so we're going to just slip this around the back of this and reconnect it right back here. Okay, just clip that back here if your clip didn't break. Okay, so just fastening this brace here for the top of the radiator. And we just got to do this on both sides here. Okay, I got this little plastic brace that goes in the front and put it back on. It came in 2 pieces. This one was broken. Somebody had tried to like plastic weld it back together, but I'll just have to get one. Now there is a sensor here. We got to reconnect that before we slip this up and on here. Air sensor. So we'll go ahead. We got some bolts over here, and we've got a couple up onto the top here. Side. We'll go ahead and get these fastened down. I'm starting with these. Now, if for some reason I tested the hood, it seemed to be fine. If it doesn't look right, I can loosen those off and readjust it. It's not really a big deal. I can still get to them. We're just going to go with this for now. Like I said, I'll find a replacement of one of these at a salvage yard, but they definitely had broken this thing, hit something. Okay, I believe I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to get my headlight over here because I think I need to get the headlight in before I get this piece fastened down. Okay, I'm going ahead with the headlight here. And we've got like 4 long bolts and a couple of short bolts. As you can see, we've got everything but the, we've got to get the headlight connector on the back before we bolt it down. And as you can see, we got our horn. Once we got this piece, we connected our horn. The only thing we have left is our fog light. And we've got a short bolt that goes up here. And then we've got this short bolt that's going to go in right here. And then we've got some long bolts, actually 3 long bolts. We got one goes here. We got one coming through here. And I've got one more that's underneath here. And slide it back into place a little bit better. So we're going to go ahead and fasten these down. We'll do the same thing on the other side, these 10 millimeters, and then we'll actually be able to put that piece in. Okay, so now we're going ahead and fasten this down, and even though it's like split in the middle, it's strong enough to get the job done that we need to do here until I can find a replacement. Okay, so now we're just ready to hook up our fog lights. We've got 2 wires on each side for the fog lights, and we've got these screws here to fasten our front bumper down. So we're ready to go ahead and get that on. Alright, that's looking a lot better with that bumper just slapped on there. Okay, we're over here at the fender wells. I'm just going to plug in these fog lights here. Now here we just have to tighten up these 8 millimeters. And we got this one that goes through right here. You remember, it actually fastens and holds the bumper right here, this one on the very edge. So I'm just going to go ahead and snug those up on both sides, all 3 of these. Okay, the only thing we got left is putting on our little fender liners here. Got all our little push pins and screws, and we've got a stud up here where it slips on. So we're going to go ahead and start getting this into place here, and we'll get our wheels on. Okay, I got the little push pins in, at least the ones I had. I'm getting ready to put this 10 millimeter here. I'm going to snap this back in over here. And then we've got to get on our Phillips screws that go here and on the other side. Okay, so we've got all these Phillips screws back in. We got all of our other, and just don't forget to tighten this 10 millimeter here down. We're going to go ahead and get our wheels on. We should be able to go ahead and take this for a test drive here. Okay, so we got my lugs tightened down. We got the wheels on. We got those torqued down to 100 foot-pounds, and we're just getting ready to go ahead and take it down the road here. Okay, so here we are going down the road. Now I know I'm going to have to get my transmission fluid back up to level and check it out, because I know I probably don't have enough in it. I just put the 6 quarts back in and kind of quit, but I think I lost a little bit more than that, so I'm going to have to get it up to temperature and go from there. Well, I've got the air running. The air's still working just fine over here, even after taking everything apart. It's telling me that my tire pressure is low, but I've already checked it. It's actually not low, so I may have a bad sensor there. So this is the first time that I've taken it down the road since getting the engine in, just getting everything back together. So like I said, I'm going to have to drive it a little bit, get it up to temperature, but it feels like it was idling real good, and it's feeling like it's got plenty of power and everything here. We're just now starting to kind of get up to temperature. Alright, so I may still have some air in the coolant system, so I'm going to have to keep a close eye on my temperature gauge here. And I've got to also make sure that I've got my fans working. It's got plenty of power. It's like it's doing really good. Okay, the fans are working. It had to do with this, I think this switch up here, this sensor being plugged in. One of these sensors up here on the front was keeping it from kicking on, but the fans are in fact working. And I've got to put a little bit of transmission fluid, but other than that, it's doing really well and driving really good. But I'm going to put a little transmission fluid in. It's probably going to need about a quart. Okay, so it's driving well, and I took it down the road and test drove it. Everything's working on it. And as far as the time I spent on this, I believe it was like 4 days altogether. It wasn't really whole days, but I spent about 2 days getting the engine and everything out and getting it apart, and I spent another day getting the engine back in, and then I've spent a little bit of a day putting everything back together. So 4 days altogether, and I wasn't really, working full days. The engine was pretty pricey. I got the engine for $1,600 off eBay, so it's actually one of the cheaper ones because they run anywhere from $2,000 and up. So those engines are very expensive. But anyways, this was pretty easy, I think, to remove this engine. And dropping the subframe, I think, is really the way to do it on this one. And like as far as the bumper removals, not a whole lot. It looks like a lot in the lights and stuff, but it's not much to it. Very easy to get all that stuff out of the way. And like I said, I worked around the AC and it's still working fine. So anyways, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And as always, I invite you to subscribe, and thanks for watching.